with that, we're going to move on and we're going to talk about Peloton. And Peloton, I believe, has a bit of a hubris problem, at least when it comes to users' personal safety and data privacy. So if you've been paying attention at all this week, for the last couple of weeks, it has not been a great period for Peloton. So, a few weeks ago, the Consumer Protection Agency issued a warning about Peloton's Tread and Tread Plus treadmills. And one child has died. And at this point, there's been about 70 some injuries as a result of this Peloton treadmill. And from what I can see, I actually considered buying one of these and instead bought a different treadmill. But from what I can see, one of the dangers is that this particular treadmill sits up a little bit higher than others, which allows a little one to get underneath it. And by the way, all treadmills are dangerous. I remember when my twins were little and, no matter how many thousand times you tell them not to play on the treadmill and you keep the key away from it, sometimes toddlers or young people can find a way to get. So I remember one of my twins learned a valuable lesson that, treadmills are dangerous. But anyway, when the CPSC came out with their warning about Peloton Tread and Tread Plus treadmills, the company really just poo-pooed it. And they, really kind of arrogantly said, you don't have anything to worry about. And this is not accurate. This is just kind of a, random warning and we're all good. And, what happened this week was that actually the company recalled all of its Peloton Tread and Tread Plus treadmills and, combined that with the statement, we were wrong. It's and I always there's so much at stake from brand reputation. And, when you've had a death, it's kind of an arrogant stance to take that, the CPSC is wrong. But then in addition to that, this week, there was news that the Peloton API was leaking private customer data. And so I'm sure many of our listeners are Peloton customers. You can see mine in the background. And, Peloton has done a great job of creating community. And, when you set up your Peloton account, you can choose to have your account be public. You can have it be private. But when you're setting it up, the system asks you for details about yourself, your height, your weight, your age, your gender, your city. Some people put a lot of information in and some of these things, people just don't think about when they put their information in and they just, put accurate information in. But the thing about having a public profile is that, part of the beauty of Peloton for many people is that you can connect with your friends. So I can see that Fred's working out or that Daniel's working out or whatever. And, I can be motivated by the fact that you're working out every day. I need to get off my butt, right? But anyway, so this API vulnerability was discovered by a guy named Jim Masters. He's a researcher at a company called Pen Test Partners, and they're a security company that actually researches breaches and vulnerabilities. And what Jim found is that the bug allowed anyone to pull users' private information directly from Peloton's servers, even if a profile was set to private. That's kind of a big deal, and I will say my profile is set to private. I'm not really interested in my information being there. So what happened, though, I thought was equally interesting, is that they reported this issue directly to Peloton in January. And Jim published a blog post about this. And he said that, he gave them kind of what is a standard in the industry 90-day notice, a 90-day deadline. Fix this bug. I'm telling you about this bug. Here's 90 days to fix it. And then I need to, I need to go public with it. And so he submitted that notification to Peloton and he got a confirmation that they'd received the notice. And then, there was radio silence. And then a couple of weeks later, Pentest noticed that Peloton had done what they thought was a partial fix of this problem, but they didn't say anything about it. And this partial fix meant fixing the API so that the data wasn't any longer available to anyone on the planet, but it was available to anyone with a Peloton account. Okay, that's not really very much of a fix.
Nope.
So then they tried again to connect, pen test partners tried again to connect with Peloton, and they were ignored. And it was only when Zach Whittaker, a TechCrunch reporter, was writing about this, and he was one of the first to report on this leak. When he asked about it, the company decided it was probably a good thing to do something. And so Masters published a blog post on this issue, and he updated it just this week following a conversation with Peloton's new CISO, who advised that the vulnerabilities had mostly been fixed within about 7 days. Okay. It's really hard to believe anything that Peloton says at this point. And again, I'm a customer, but it is interesting. Just kind of the attitude that Peloton has, this really is, doesn't concern me. It shouldn't concern you. We'll deal with this in our way, whatever. It just seems like a really arrogant posture on the part of the brand. Oh, and the company's stock was down about 15% on Wednesday. So maybe that's what happens when you act like a jerk. I don't know. My hope is that I'm like to err on the side of optimism. My hope is that Peloton will learn from this and realize that this is not the best way to treat customers' data, certainly, to treat injuries as a result of its products. And I know that you have some thoughts on a famous Peloton user and really what that might be. So why don't you share that?
Well, Shelley, you're the most famous Peloton user I know.
Oh, by far not.
But there are others out there. And in fact, the issue of the API here, which, by the way, this kind of sounds a bit like, without some of the arrogance, what Zoom went through. Right. When everybody just jumped online and started having Zoom calls for business, for personal, for schools, the works. And Zoom really hadn't been set up at that point to really handle that type of massive wave of user adoption and security and everything that came with that. And I think Peloton probably got caught up a little bit in that type of a situation here, where they just hadn't really thought about security and how important and critical it is, in this type of an environment. Now they realize, look, after a year of pumping out bikes as fast as we can and building our base and doing lots of marketing and saying, hey, let's go Peloton. Now they actually have to, pay the price for ignoring security. So, this came up, this whole issue, though, back in January when Joe Biden became or was sworn in as the president of the United States. President Biden is a very, I guess, the famous Peloton user out there. And, the Secret Service and everybody looks at all this device and they go, hey, this is great. He's got an exercise bike, but it's got a camera. It's got data. It's got all sorts of things in there. It can listen to conversations. It can see what's going on in a room. So, essentially, you're in the situation here where the tech that we're using for fitness, in this case, the president using it, which is a great thing, has so many potential vulnerability points in it, so many risk points that, in order to really make it truly safe to put in the White House, you would literally have to disconnect everything that's electronic on it and just simply have an exercise bike. Without all the two-way communications and the sharing of data. Right. And I know that seems a little bit extreme, but there is something in the cybersecurity space here beyond even just the API issues here. The fact that these devices are all connecting wirelessly into some Wi-Fi device within your house, your apartment, wherever you happen to be. There's an attack strategy in cybersecurity called the man in the middle, where an organization puts a device or a person somewhere in between one person and another, and they capture the data that goes back and forth between them. This is most famously used with devices like the Stingray cellular devices that were found floating around Washington, D.C. a few years back, where a user comes into D.C., they turn on their mobile device, and there's a femtocell or a picocell, basically a small portable cell tower that mimics the real cell tower. It acts as that gateway. Your phone connects into it, you make a phone call, and everything you do, everything you transmit over there is now captured by this picocell or femtocell, the Stingray type of attack here. But the same thing theoretically is possible with a Wi-Fi device. When you go into a Starbucks or a Cozy or wherever you happen to be and you connect up to the local Wi-Fi, very often those devices themselves are fake devices.
Right.
It's very easy for somebody to go into a shopping mall, for example, and just set up a fake Wi-Fi device. Right. Say, hey, look, it's free. It's Dulles Town Center Mall, free access. and people log into it.
Which is
Well,
why I never do that.
I know. So in the Wi-Fi case, though, theoretically, it's possible to do the same thing. Basically, set up a very strong Wi-Fi signal that somebody within their own home could accidentally log into. So the security risks here are very high, and I would say just based on the fact that so many of the people that we engage with are now working in their homes. All the devices that they have there, all the electronics, everything, that's a window into their home. In particular, something like the Peloton bike, which you see a lot of in the background of the offices or other, type devices. You got to be really careful when they're not being used. Turn them off. And when they are being used, make sure it's properly configured, and you're at least making yourself as secure as you possibly can be. So, just kind of to wrap this up, we don't know if the Peloton bike, or at least I don't know if the bike actually made it into the White House. How many layers of duct tape it has, and how many wire connections were cut. But definitely an issue here, and I think you're spot on. The sheer arrogance. I mean, I know Peloton CEO said, like, "Hey, we admitted it, we were wrong," but the fact that they were so vehemently opposed to action, on both the API issue and on the physical risk issue of their treadmills. There's just no place for that. You want to ruin your brand in 24 hours, tell your users you don't care about safety in their device.
Right. Well, and it's just, I think sometimes people don't think about enough about the information that's out there, but when my name and my city and my gender and, my, I think I read that not necessarily your date of birth, but if it happened to be your birthday, that information was available. I mean, the reality of it is there are all these little breadcrumbs out there, and that on all of us, right? And so it's not hard for somebody. And by the way, again, these databases, this information is routinely leaked on cybersecurity forums, on hacker forums. Huge data dumps.
Yep.
And we talked about that last week. And so, it's not hard to go through these. And by the way, now they're also using, AI and machine learning to automate some of these processes and to pull information out of these databases. So it really is important to protect your data and protect your privacy, and to patronize brands that care as much about that as you do. And so I think that to me, that was what was important here. And, I am a Peloton fan. I am a customer. And there are many things I love about the experience that Peloton has created. This experience, their attitude as it related to the consumer safety warning that led to an ultimate recall, and their attitude here. Although the one thing I will give them a pass on is that in Jim McMaster's blog post about this instance, he indicated that the CISO at Peloton was new to the role. So did they have a CISO? Was that, you know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of times in an organization, when somebody's coming in, somebody's going out, sometimes things drop through the cracks. So I'll give them one teeny tiny pass for that. But
they had a CISO in place. I don't know what happened or what that transition's like. We'll have to dig into that a little bit.
Yeah. So anyway, I thought it was an interesting, it wasn't a great week or two for Peloton.
No.